Lumayo ka.
The unlikely event of an emergency, I will announce instructions and procedures. Legend of weapons aboard this vessel can be found in the following locations. First deck stern with active boat.
Uy, bahay kubo,
Second
ha?
deck stern, landing third, and pilot house. All light jacket lockers and clearly marked yachting instructions are inside. Under Pennsylvania state law, smoking is prohibited on the interior of the vessel. Please smoke on the outside decks. We just ask you courteous to passengers. Please make sure you utilize the trash receptacle scattered throughout the boat. For any garbage you may have, remember absolutely nothing that is overboard and restrooms and off touches can be found at the stern of the first deck.
Check mo sa
And for your convenience,
YouTube.
we have a full-service cocktail bar
Nakalive.
on both the first and second deck, as well as a concession stand on the first deck. This is one of our happy hour cruises. Our pricing will be in effect for the duration of the cruise, so make sure you stop by down and see our bartenders, Sean and Amanda. You can ask them about the cocktail specials of the Eve, Jolly Roger, and the Southern Super Slam, something, whatever that's called. I don't know, but they will. So you can ask them about that. I think I can help you out. If you have any questions regarding safety or operation of the vessel, please don't hesitate to ask any of the crew members. On behalf of myself and others here on the Duchess this evening, I'd like to say welcome aboard.
YouTube. YouTube. Hindi ka fans talaga. Oras pa. Naka-live talaga siya. Okay, so we are about to go. About to see. We are live here. Alright.
Once again, I'd like to say welcome aboard the Duchess. Our station is squared out from Gateway 15. It was not always known to be We got our start idea. 5. We were made by the name of John Connolly and was elected as treasurer for an organization called ALCA, the Allegheny County Sanitary. Back then, Pittsburgh was still a very dirty and smoky steel city, and ALCA was tasked with cleaning up the waterways that surround the city of Pittsburgh. That was a task very near and dear to Mr. Connolly's heart. We refer to our waterways as
Sheraton.
Pittsburgh. As luck would have, they also had a nephew, Captain Jack Gessler, a graduate with the Merchant Mariner Club. With his help, he said, let's get a boat, show people our beautiful city from a totally new vantage point. They found the perfect vessel for the job. It was a fishing boat in Lake Erie called the Bridget Canyon. They made the purchase and decided to bring it here to the city. Let's go. They figure Erie's about 2.5 hours away by car. They were just not having it. The vessel was much too large to bring here by way of trailer, so it could have to be sailed through 3 Great Lakes and over 2,200 obscure rivers. The journey took 31 days and 31 nights to complete. But on May 16th, 1958, it arrived right here in the Minnesota River. The very next day, she was christened and Gateway Clipper left with her on her journey. I think John Connolly made the right call in the end. Its one vessel operation has today grown to a 56 vessel operation you see at our dock today. In addition to our fleet, our beautiful city of Pittsburgh has many sights to be seen, as well as many stories to be told. And here today to do just that, up here on the top deck, is your narrator, Joyce. Take it away, Joyce.
Station Square. Hard rock pala to.
Thank you very much, Captain Aaron, and welcome aboard, everyone, to the Gateway Clipper Duchess. How's the volume level? You folks in the back, you good? Okay. Last cruise we were having a little bit of it's because of the machines there. Okay, that's exactly where somebody was sitting last cruise that had some trouble with the volume. So, all right, I'll just try to keep the volume up. All right, so over the next hour, we're going to traverse all 3 rivers. We're going to take a look at the city skyline, and I'm going to give you a lot of history and just some interesting facts of what we see. So diving right into it, this first bridge, the first of many, is the oldest bridge in the city, and it was also the first bridge. This is the Smithfield Street Bridge. When it opened in 1818, it was a covered bridge. That covered bridge burned down along with the city in the Great Pittsburgh Fire of 1845. The second version of the bridge was a wire rope suspension structure that was designed by John Roebling, who's the same man that designed the Brooklyn Bridge. That served the city just fine until an increase in traffic required it to be redesigned yet a third time. Gustav Lindenthal stepped in and designed the lenticular truss bridge that it remains today. And this version of the bridge was opened in 1883. That's a whole lot of history for one bridge. And the Pittsburgh decided to make it a National Historic Landmark in 1976. So, it's going to keep that old-fashioned look, and the city cannot paint it yellow, even if it might really want to match the set. As you can see, we are starting to make our turn on the Monongahela River, and we will gradually start to make our way down to the point. But if you look towards the stern of the vessel, and then kind of sticking out in between the vegetation there, you'll see 2 sets of railroad tracks that's going up to the top of the mountain. I'll point them out again once we ride past Station Square, but you can see it much better than there. Those railroad tracks is one of 2 surviving funicular inclines. That one in particular is the Monongahela Incline, which is the nation's oldest continually operating funicular incline. How this type of incline works is that there's 2 sets of railroad tracks and 2 cars that are connected via a cable. So as the car in the bottom station goes up, the car at the top station goes down at the same speed they meet in the middle. You'll never see one car without the other. At one time, Pittsburgh had 23 of these inclines, and 17 of them were on Mount Washington alone. Because for decades, Mount Washington was a very busy coal mine. In fact, it went by a different name, Coal Hill. All this lush greenery, all this vegetation that you see on Mount Washington today wasn't there. It was completely stripped bare, as it was an active work site. But over time, that mine closed down, and most of those inclines went away. But the 2 that survived, they don't haul coal anymore, they haul people, tourists, as well as commuters every single day, up to 400-foot elevation to the top of Mount Washington. Now that we've completed our turn, if you look to the right, we can see the city skyline. There's a few notable buildings that we can see that I'm going to point out. The first one is the brown building with the Huntington logo on it. That's the Grant Building. It was opened in 1929. But what is really interesting about it is that beacon on the roof. Right now it's blinking, but not at an even rate. That's because it's spelling out Pittsburgh in Morse code. There was a while there was a malfunction in the relay switch, and that beacon just kind of blinked a lot of gibberish in Morse code until somebody finally realized, hey, that's not spelled right. And in 2009, they were able to fix it, and now it properly works. That beacon is a certified lighthouse. It's an aviation lighthouse, as we really don't need them down here for the river traffic. To the left of the Grant building, you see that tall, slender silver building that looks like four skinny buildings that are bound together. That's One Oxford Center. It has that peculiar architecture because it was constructed to have as many corner offices as possible, which is all well and good. But then you realize that some of those corner offices are looking directly into someone else's corner office. So I guess the battle among the employees is not to get the office with the view, it's to get the office with the view of the city, not the view of your neighbor's office. Now, if you look a little deeper into the city, and you'll be able to see it clear as we clear Smithfield Street Bridge, you'll see a dark building with an angled roof. That is the newest skyscraper to the city. It was opened in 2015, and it's called the Tower at PNC Plaza. That is one of the greenest high-rises in the world. It not just met, but exceeded the criteria to be Platinum LEED certified. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. That entire building is so self-sufficient in its energy production that it's completely self-sufficient for about 40% of the year, and it only consumes the same amount of electricity as two average family households. Now, if you look to the left, now you can get a much better view of the Monongahela Incline, as well as Station Square itself, which at one time was a very busy railroad hub. It opened in 1897, and it serviced the Pittsburgh and Lake Erie Railroad. That's what the P&LERR is on the top of that building that used to be a railroad station. Now, if you look again to the right, back to the city, you'll notice in the block that's right in front of the river, you notice there's a series of buildings that look kind of old-fashioned, almost look like they're part of a movie set compared to what surrounds it. That is known as Pittsburgh's historic First Side. It's pretty much ranges from the black and white Edward C. Myers building down to the orange taller building with the fire escapes. That was Pittsburgh's first business district, and it has been historically preserved, so it looks largely the same way it did over 100 years ago. But if you look up into the sky, you can see more modern architecture and what is truly the most gorgeous building in the city and the most iconic. That building with all the glass and the spires, that is PPG Place. The big tower is PPG 1, that is one of 6. All 6 of those towers have those spires on it because it was heavily influenced by neo-Gothic architecture. And also some not so recent architecture like the Victoria Tower in the House of Parliament. There are nearly 20,000 panes of that gorgeous black glass that covers that plaza. So much glass that PPG, which stood for Pittsburgh Plate Glass, while they were constructing the plaza, ran out of their own glass. And they had to buy some from their competitors to finish this project. But it was absolutely worth it because the plaza is truly beautiful. And if you find yourself in the city in the wintertime, it's a great place to go ice skating, as they set up a lovely ice skating rink right in the center. The next thing I'm going to talk about is right down here on the river. You can look to either the left or the right. It's basically the same thing. These are 2 bridge piers. It's all that remains of the Wabash Railroad Bridge, which was built between 1902 and 1904. They serviced the Wabash Railroad Terminal, which was on the city side here where the Key Bank building is today. But that terminal burned down in 1946, leaving the bridge useless. So in 1948, they tore down the railroad bridge, and there's been discussion over the decades about replacing it with a vehicular bridge, but ultimately that never happened. But the piers themselves aren't going anywhere because they are National Historic Landmarks, and they are for sale. They are privately owned for decades by a man who spent his entire career on the river. He was a well-known, very knowledgeable riverman. But he passed away in 2020, so now his bridge piers are on the market. And if you have a few $1 million in fund money, you can be the next proud owner of a piece of Pittsburgh history in the Wabash Railroad bridge piers. Now, if you look to the left, you can see Highmark Stadium. It opened in 2013, and it is the home of the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. That is Pittsburgh's soccer team. Yeah, Pittsburgh has a soccer team. We've had one since 1999. A lot of people, including locals, don't know that we have a soccer team. It was also once home to the Pittsburgh Passion, which is our women's football team. Yes, Pittsburgh has a women's football team. A lot of people, including locals, don't know that we have these things. We got more than just the big three here, folks. But you get one guess as to what their team colors are. It's anything other than black and yellow. I'm sorry, useless. Eventually, all sports teams get with the program and just adopt the black and yellow. The next bridge we're going to go underneath is a Fort Pitt Bridge. It is a double-decker bowstring arch bridge. It was completed in 1959. But that's not what it's best known for. It's best known for being the busiest bridge in the city. Because there is an especially nail-biting lane exchange, whether you're going in or out of the Fort Pitt Tunnel. So much so that there is a social media meme for it. It is so infamous. It made it to internet memeage. And it goes like this. The left lane exits right, and the right lane exits left. Here is 300 feet. Make it happen. But the Fort Pitt Bridge is also has a better reputation than that. It is known as Pittsburgh's front door, as if you take the Parkway West, that is the main road into downtown Pittsburgh from the Pittsburgh International Airport. And the city is completely obscured by Mount Washington and all the other hills around it. So when you exit that tunnel and find yourself on the bridge, the city explodes into view. And there really is nothing else in the world quite like it. Now if you look to the right, you can see Point St. Paul. Can you see that flagpole? Now look down. You see that small structure with the pointy roof? That is the Fort Pitt Blockhouse. That is all that has survived of the original Fort Pitt, which was built right here at the point. A very strategic location. That little building is older than our country itself, as it was built in the 1760s. Fort Pitt, as well as Pittsburgh, was named after William Pitt. William Pitt was the Prime Minister of England at the time that the Pittsburgh settlement got its name in 1758. It was Brigadier General John Ford that gave Pittsburgh its name. Pittsburgh, similar to Edinburgh. That's why Pittsburgh has its H on the end. If you want to be technical, it's pronounced Pittsburgh. But over time, we just started calling it the Bird, but we kept that H, and we will correct anyone who doesn't spell Pittsburgh with the H. Now, in just a moment here, we're going to come up to the confluence of the three rivers, where the Allegheny and the Monongahela come together to form the Ohio. It's very romantic, carving out Pittsburgh's unique peninsula shape, which is the downtown area, which is also called the Golden Triangle. So we're going to leave the Monongahela for a little while, but before we do, here's some information about the river we're sailing down. The Mon is a mud-based river. It is the only one out of the three that is mud-based. The other two are sand and gravel-based. Even the name Monongahela reflects this, because that is a Unami word from the local tribes that live in the area that means steep sliding banks to the water. That's what Monongahela means, because the muddy banks would erode and crumble away. It's 128 miles long. It ends right here at the point, but it begins in Fairmont, West Virginia, which is south from here, but it's a higher elevation. So gravity takes over, and somewhat unique for a river, it flows north its entire length. And right here, at mile marker 0 for all three rivers, is where it meets up with the Allegheny and make the Ohio. And we got a fantastic view of Point State Park and that gorgeous fountain, the star of the park. As for Point State Park itself, it is 36 acres of dedicated green space. In the middle of the 20th century, this was a lot of just broken down industry, a lot of dead factories and urban decay. So the city bought up the property and eventually converted it to the gorgeous public green space we can enjoy today. And that fountain right there, which is about to be obscured by our sister vessel, the Princess. Everybody say hi to the Princess. That fountain can shoot up to 150 feet in the air. But on most days, especially today, boy was it windy earlier, I used to have an umbrella. If it's at full height, the splash zone can blow water all the way to the Wyndham Hotel, there on the other little park. You'll notice most days it's a little bit shorter because there are wind sensors with it. Now, if you look towards the left slash back of the vessel, you'll see there's the Ohio River there. And we will visit it later, but while we're talking about riverbeds, the Ohio starts right here and it flows 981 miles to Cairo, Illinois. That's where it meets up with the Mississippi. Of course, you know, if you take the Mississippi down south, you're in the Gulf of Mexico, which gives you access to both the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans via around Florida or through the Panama Canal. Well, that means that Pittsburgh is traversable via waterway to almost anywhere on planet Earth. That does come into play because Pittsburgh's a very busy inland waterport. We got more freight moving through our three rivers than even the Panama Canal itself. And that's only possible because of our lock and dam system. The natural state of these rivers is only a few feet deep, and they'd be a whole lot narrower too. But our locks and dams widen the rivers and give us an average depth of 16.5 feet, which makes it safe for barges and larger vessels. In fact, the Allegheny, which we're going down now, is 328 miles long, but only the last 72 miles is accessible via a barge or larger vessel because that's where the last lock and dam is, in East Brady, PA. Now, I don't know that I had mentioned that the name Ohio means fair waters, and while we're continuing down the Allegheny, Allegheny means beautiful stream. Now, I'd also mentioned that the Ohio and the Allegheny are sand and gravel-based rivers. Well, Pittsburgh's glass industry has that natural resource to thank. The first two factories opened in 1797, and we've had a glass industry ever since because of the rich natural resources that still get dredged from the river up to this day. Now back to bridges. This next bridge is the Fort Duquesne Bridge. It is an identical twin to Fort Pitt, another double-decker bowstring arch bridge. It was finished in 1963, but it was not open to traffic until 1969 because, due to a lot of government red tape, the bridge was finished years before the connecting interstate. So the Fort Duquesne Bridge just kind of stops 90 feet before it could connect to a road on the other side, leaving it, totally unusable and nicknamed by locals as the Bridge to Nowhere. And nobody could take the bridge to nowhere, but one person tried, emphasis on tried. One night in 1964, a 21-year-old college student somehow missed the signs, somehow missed the barriers, and drove his aunt's 1959 station wagon clean off the bridge to nowhere. The car did a flip and it landed on the roof of a bank on the other side of the river. It's a very famous Pittsburgh story. It is okay to tell the story. It was an accident, and not only did the young man survive, he was remarkably unhurt. He was probably really shaken up when he was upside down, but he wasn't hurt. The kid got out of the car and found the cabin, and lived out the rest of his life with the weird honor of being the only man to ever fly off the bridge to nowhere. Now that we cleared the bridge, if you look to the right, it's just light enough that you can see it. There's a beautiful mural that's here on the river's edge. It was finished last year by Cameron Nesbitt, and its name is Black Flowers. Black Flowers contains, as Camo Nesbitt puts it, 12 underrepresented black faces of Pittsburgh. You may recognize a few faces because Wiz Khalifa is there, as well as the actor Billy Porter, but there are other faces of black of past and present that you may not recognize their face, but they were highly influential, like Mary Cardwell Dawson. She was a musician and a teacher, and a founding director of the National Negro Opera Company, which got its start in Homewood, in a beautiful Queen Anne-style house that is on Apple Street in the neighborhood of Homewood. The Historical Society just recently got $2 million in order to fix up that house and turn it into a museum. So that should be coming down the pike in just a few years. Now at the tail end of the mural, if you look up, you'll see 3 identical silver buildings. That's Gateway Center. Gateway Center 1, the building closest to us, is home to KDKA, which is the nation's oldest commercial radio station. It was founded in 1920. In its inaugural year, it had the first commercial radio broadcast, in which they reported the results from the 1920 presidential election, which, if you're curious, that was Warren G. Harding, who's one of the lesser-known presidents. More famous about what came out after he died. Now, we are about to go underneath the first of our 3 sister bridges. This trio of bridges is unique in a number of ways. They are the only trio of identical bridges that are side by side. And when they opened, when by the time all three were opened by 1928, they were the only self-anchored suspension bridges in the country. And then all three are named after notable Pittsburghers. This first one is named after Roberto Clemente. Clemente was a Puerto Rican baseball player. He played outfield for the Pirates, specifically right field, from 1955 until 1972. But it was in 1972 that Roberto Clemente lost his life in a plane crash. But he was on that plane because he was delivering aid to earthquake victims in Nicaragua. Apparently, several planes that went to Nicaragua that he had arranged before that, the aid had mysteriously disappeared, maybe due to some government shenanigans. That's what they thought anyway. So he decided he was going to escort this plane full of aid himself. But unfortunately, it went down shortly after takeoff in Puerto Rico. Clemente is very well known, more like a national hero, but very much a major Pittsburgh hero, a great humanitarian and philanthropist. And Major League Baseball renamed their commissioner award the Roberto Clemente Award. It's issued every year to a player that exemplifies outstanding sportsmanship and community engagement. Now, as for this next bridge, this is named after Andy Warhol, or Andy Warhola, as he was known growing up in the Oakland neighborhood of Pittsburgh. He grew up with his blue-collar working-class family. Warhol was frequently sick. He frequently had to stay home from school. He had some kind of neurological issue in his youth, and he was very insecure and quiet, but very artistic. And it was heavily influenced by his mother, who had said she would reward Andy with chocolate for every piece of art that he completed. And in 1949, after he was all grown up, Warhol got out of town. He fled to New York City, and he never looked back, to become the first successful commercial artist, and then later morphing into the weird and wonderful pop artist that we know him as today. He didn't have a great opinion of Pittsburgh at the time, but we don't hold that against him, because on the north end of the Andy Warhol Bridge, we have the Andy Warhol Museum, which is the most comprehensive art museum that's dedicated to a single artist. Now, this third bridge is dedicated to Richard Carson. Carson was a marine biologist and environmentalist. Some say she founded the modern environmentalist movement. In 1962, she published Silent Spring, which is a book that discussed the dangers of the man-made chemical DDT and the negative effects it had on wildlife. There are still environmental laws in the books today that were influenced by Carson's work. Now, if we look back up to the city skyline, you see the dark building that is the tallest, and it's supposed to say UPMC, in pink tonight it only says UMC. That is the USX Tower, also known as the US Steel Building. It opened in 1970 and was constructed with a then new material called 410 steel, which is also known as weathering steel. What weathering steel does is it's designed to rust slowly over time, and that rust is supposed to coat the building and protect it from the weather. But in 1970, Pittsburgh still had an acid rain problem, and that caused the new building to rust faster than it was supposed to, and rust would fall off the building, pelting the sidewalk and any unlucky pedestrians below. And the city had to spend tens of thousands of dollars replacing said sidewalks. So kind of a rocky start, but these days Pittsburgh doesn't have acid rain anymore. And at 64 stories tall, it's still the tallest building in the city. But it's not the largest. Right here in front of us on the right-hand side, this behemoth building is the largest one in the city. And when it was built, when it was opened in 2004, it was the largest green building in the world. It is a green building. It has a gold LEED certification. It is the David L. Lawrence Convention Center, and it encompasses 5 city blocks. Now, moving on to something a whole lot older, 100 years older in fact, this is the Fort Wayne Railroad Bridge. It opened in 1904. It is a double-decker railroad bridge. It's still in use today, 118 years later, but only the top deck is used. Now, you can't really see it in the dark, but the bridge piers themselves, the stone is different colors. The top half of it is more of a brown stone, and the bottom half of it is black stone. That is because in 1918, this bridge needed to be raised 16 feet to accommodate river traffic, which is enough of an engineering task. But even more so when you learn that they had to do this while this bridge was still in active use. So I think that means they had to work around the train schedule and probably do it faster than they should have had to. Now we're getting ready to turn on the Allegheny and make our way back down to the point, but there's two more bridges I'm going to point out. The first one is directly in front of us. It's the Veterans Bridge. It opened in 1988. Visually, probably the blandest one we'll see tonight. It is home to Interstate 579. 579 connects Interstate 279 to Interstate 376. An important job, but kind of a small one. It's only 2.6 miles long, and it is one of the shortest interstates in the country. It really is just the bridge itself. Now, just beyond the bridge, and you guys here on the third deck, you'll be able to see it better as we make our turn. You'll see another yellow bridge. It's the 16th Street, or David McCullough Bridge. It opened in 1922, but in 2013 it was dedicated to the Pulitzer Prize-winning author and commentator, David McCullough, who just recently passed away a couple of weeks ago, on August 7th. He was 89 years old. Very prolific author and a great historian. I do recommend, if you're a history fan, go check out his books. But yes, this is another yellow bridge. Yeah, we got a lot of those here. Now here's the story behind that. You remember when we were at the point, and I happened to mention that the downtown area, which is triangular shape, its nickname was the Golden Triangle. Well, that term appears in print as early as 1914, but we're not sure who exactly coined it or when, but it's generally understood to be referencing the fact that back in the day, that's where all of the banks were in Pittsburgh. That's where the quote-unquote gold was located, in the downtown area. And this shade of yellow, this paint that is on all these bridges, its proper name is Aztec Gold. And in the late 70s and all through the 80s, the city decided to paint their bridges that existed at the time that connected to the Golden Triangle this nice Aztec gold. And they serve as golden bridges to get you to our Golden Triangle. So that's why we got yellow bridges. The reason we still have yellow bridges is because Pittsburgh cannot get away from that black and gold color scheme. We were given a choice in the mid-2010s. And the city said, we need to refurbish a lot of these bridges. Pittsburghers, if you want a different color, speak now. We can do green, we can do blue, or we can keep it yellow. You're going to want yellow, right? The Pittsburghers said, oh yeah, of course we want yellow. So, as we are refurbishing these bridges, the city is keeping them yellow. The reason you can't turn around without seeing something that's black and gold in Pittsburgh is because those two colors were featured heavily in William Pitt's family coat of arms. That's the source of it. It was the William Pitt's coat of arms. And the city ended up borrowing those colors for a lot of their things, and eventually all of our sports teams became black and gold too, which I didn't know was weird until I was an adult. I just kind of assumed all the cities did that. I don't know, I wasn't really into the sports. And then I realized that Pittsburgh is kind of weird and unique in that way. Speaking of bridges, I haven't done a count, but we have been underneath or talking about a load of them today. We have 446 bridges in this city.
446.
The last count should be more than any city in the world, including Venice, which I believe is number 2. They have about 409 bridges. Now, if you turn to the left, back up to the city skyline, you see that building that it has that pyramid shape that is all lit up? It's directly in front of the USX Tower. That is the Gulf Tower. When that building opened in the late 1930s, I think about 1937, it was the tallest building in the city and remained the tallest until the USX Tower opened in 1970. Those the different colors on those tiers are dependent on the weather. I believe the first 3 are related to temperature. The purple one underneath that, I believe, is precipitation. Underneath that should be humidity. And the pink one on the bottom is wind speed. Very detailed. And if you want to check my math there and make sure that I'm right, there is a very useful infographic if you just Google Gulf Tower, I don't know, roof colors or something like that. When it did open, it lit up then too in 1937. but it would change color to either blue or orange, depending if we had good or bad weather. I do not know which color was which or what their standards were for good or bad weather. But that's because blue and orange was the Gulf Company's colors.
25?
Now, at this point, I'm going to take a brief pause in the narration. Give you a chance to stand up and stretch your legs if you want. It is the happy hour tour after all. If you want to visit Sean on the second deck, he's got the full cocktail bar. Also Pepsi products and water. But if you want something to eat, go visit Amanda on the first deck. She's got the same cocktail bar and a snack bar. And of course, we have the $5 signature cocktails for happy hour, like the Jolly Roger, Spice Rum, Banana Liqueur, and Lemonade, and the Southern Summer Blast. Here it is, new one, which is Southern Comfort, Cranberry, Lemonade, and a splash of Sprite. Sean says it tastes like a strawberry. So go see if he's right. So if you want to visit one of them, I will be back in just a moment. About when we hit PNC Park.
Let's choose one of the options. You need a bag.
Let me then look up tickets online and I'll buy it right now.
Alright, I've returned. Yes, I know that's a very short break, but there is so much to cover. Once we clear the Clemente Bridge again, if you look on the right, we get a great view of PNC Park. But I implore you to look just to the right of the stadium first. You'll see a small grassy hill with yellow numbers. That is all of the Pittsburgh Pirate jersey numbers that have been retired over the years. Roberto Clemente's number 21 is on that hill. But it's very hard to see in the dark, but on the top right, there is a number 42 that is blue. This was not a Pittsburgh Pirate, he played for a different team. But this number has been retired throughout the league. Does anybody know who that is? It was Jackie Robinson, yes. But Jackie Robinson was a Dodger, right? He wasn't a Pirate. So, number 42 is blue. As for the stadium itself, it's looking kind of quiet tonight, but it really is an objectively beautiful ballpark. That's not just me. ESPN Magazine had voted it the best stadium in the country to catch a ball game, because there really isn't a bad seat in the house. Even in the peanut gallery, you're no more than 88 feet from the action. And if the action is distressing to you, and you need to look away, you can look away and admire Pittsburgh's lovely skyline. And maybe that can distract you from what's going on the field. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do in your current field. Now, all around the outside of the stadium, there are bronze statues of players from different eras. There's Honus Wagner, Roberto Clemente, Willie Stargell, and there's one that we can see from the river. It's coming up to the left of the stadium, and it is nighttime, so it's hard. It's kind of lit up from the bottom. It's a bronze statue of a man running with his cap held in the air. That's Bill Mazeroski. That is from a moment in Pirates history, the 1960 World Series. That year, Pirates were playing against the heavily favored New York Yankees. But they made it all the way to Game 7 regardless. They stuck it out. But by the ninth inning, the Pirates were done. They were just about to lose. The Yankees were ahead. It was the bottom of the ninth. Yankees fans as well as Pirates fans were probably starting to pack up. But at the bottom of the ninth, Mazeroski hit a walk-off home run at the last possible moment, which was just enough to put the points up for a final score of Pittsburgh 10, Yankees 9. And you could hear the jaws popping off and landing on the floor, because nobody expected that. At least of all Yankees fans. I don't even know if Pirates fans expected that. It was an incredible moment, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to witness. Hasn't happened before or since. An amazing moment, not just in Pirates history, but baseball history. And I was giving a sightseeing tour a couple weeks ago, And the woman raised her hand and said, "Oh yeah, I was at that game. Yes, it was very exciting. Lots of celebrating afterwards." She was so nonchalant about being there to witness an amazing part of baseball history. And if you were at Forbes Field in 1968 Game 7 of the World Series, she's like, "Oh yes, oh, yeah, it's very exciting." You never know who you're going to meet when you do this job. It's great. People come up to you with just the most outstanding stories of their time in Pittsburgh, whether they still live here or not. Now, once we clear the Duquesne Bridge, you're going to see kind of an abstract looking structure right in front of the People's Building. That is the Vietnam Veterans Monument. Underneath that abstract sculpture, there are bronze statues of soldiers that are being greeted by their loved ones as they come home from the war. And it's all underneath an abstract lotus blossom. That's what that sculpture is. And a lotus blossom is a symbol of peace. It really is a touching monument. It's one of the nicer ones that I've ever seen. And once we clear the People's Building, you'll see stage AE pop out from behind the trees.